He defended the power of the federal government, prosecuted the most infamous conspiracy in early American history, and left a lasting mark on the U.S. legal system. As the longest-serving Attorney General in American history, William Wirt shaped the role of federal law, influenced Supreme Court cases, and even became a third-party presidential candidate. But why is he barely remembered today? Today on the JQA Treatment, we examine the life and legacy of William Wirt, from his early legal career to his time as Attorney General under 3 presidents, and his impact on American law, national unity, and political history. Before he was shaping American law, William Wirt was a self-made man. Born in 1772 in Maryland, he was orphaned at a young age and largely self-educated, proving early on that he had a brilliant legal mind. Now, isn't that usually how all of these people start? Self-educated at a young age, usually had some kind of trauma at their early life, usually brilliant. Apparently that's how he was. And so Wirt became a lawyer in Virginia, quickly gaining a reputation for sharp legal arguments and eloquence. He specialized in criminal law and took on high-profile cases, making a name for himself as a fearsome prosecutor. Wirt was a strong supporter of Jeffersonian democracy, arguing in favor of federal authority in court cases that defended Jefferson's controversial Embargo Act, which restricted trade with Britain and France. To elaborate a little bit more, that Embargo Act was probably one of Jefferson's most ambitious and probably his biggest downfall. In his second term, he decided to stop trade with Britain and France as a power move to say that America could handle its own. It definitely could not handle its own. His writing and legal arguments caught the attention of President James Madison, leading to his appointment as prosecutor in one of the most dramatic trials in early U.S. history. One of his speeches in the courtroom said, "The strength of the Union depends upon the firm application of law and the power of the federal government to preserve order." Wirt's first major moment in the national spotlight came when he was selected to prosecute Aaron Burr, the former vice president of the U.S., on charges of treason. It was one of the most sensational trials in American history. Now, Aaron Burr was accused of plotting to seize land in the Western Territories and create his own independent empire. President Thomas Jefferson was determined to make an example of Burr, pushing for a treason conviction. Wirt delivered one of the most famous legal arguments of the 19th century, describing Burr's alleged conspiracy as a deep-laid scheme of treason. His oratory skills captivated the courtroom, cementing his reputation as one of the nation's best legal minds. Burr was acquitted, partly because Chief Justice John Marshall ruled that there was insufficient evidence of treason. Despite the loss, Wirt's performance in court made him a household name and led to his appointment as Attorney General of the United States, one of the few times in history that somebody can lose and still win. The power of law must prevail over the ambitions of men. This was his speech during the Burr trial. After his role in the Burr trial, William Wirt was appointed Attorney General of the United States in 1817 by President James Monroe, the last of the Virginia dynasty, a position he would hold for 12 years, longer than any Attorney General before or since. Now, Wirt became a key figure in shaping the legal doctrine of federal supremacy, arguing that the Constitution gave more power to the national government than individual states. Some of his biggest Supreme Court cases were, like McCulloch v. Maryland, where he argued that states could not tax federal institutions, strengthening the power of the federal government over state laws. He also did Gibbons v. Ogden in 1824, where he helped establish federal authority over interstate commerce, laying the foundation for America's national economy. Now, Wirt was one of the first federal officials to argue against the mistreatment of Native Americans, opposing state laws that tried to remove Native tribes from their lands. His legal arguments, though not always successful, laid the groundwork for later cases defending Native sovereignty. He said in court once, "If the Constitution is to have meaning, then its laws must stand supreme over all who live under its protection." Now, let's look at some of his legacy to see what he really left behind. Now, I mentioned something about him pioneering third-party politics. He ran for president in 1832 as the nominee of a anti-Masonic party. It's kind of actually the first third party in U.S. history. It formed in opposition to Freemasonry, which many believed was corrupt and anti-democratic. The irony, though, was that Wirt himself had been a Freemason. It's kind of a bit awkward running for the anti-Masonic party, being probably the 33rd degree on there. So he did run against Andrew Jackson and Henry Clay, and Wirt was only able to win Vermont's electoral votes, but it did help legitimize third parties in American politics. So again, kind of leaving the foundation for, hey, there's somebody other than the Democrats, there's somebody other than the National Republicans at the time. Now, he was the longest serving Attorney General. He shaped Supreme Court rulings that strengthened federal power, and we talked about kind of how he set early legal precedents for Native American rights. But where was he during the Trail of Tears? Because could he have stopped it? You know, it unfolded after he was already kind of out of his peak influence. He wasn't involved in anything. He wasn't directly involved in there. I mean, his major role really came before it in the Cherokee Nation versus Georgia. He represented the Cherokee Nation, and he argued that they were a sovereign nation and should be protected from Georgia's laws. But it was John Marshall that ruled that they were a domestic dependent nation, and that weakened their legal standing. So Wirt tried to stop what became the Trail of Tears, but the ruling didn't go far enough. And then under Jackson, the removal policies accelerated anyway, until ultimately Van Buren was able to kind of push it to the final limits to where it ousted all of the Cherokee. So by the time the forced marches began, which was about 1838, 1839, Wirt was already out of the political spotlight. Not only out of the political spotlight, he was also out of the earthly realm, because he dies in 1834. And really, it was mostly because of a sudden illness. Some say it was like a fever or some kind of infection while he was traveling somewhere near Washington, D.C. So he didn't really get to see the full horror of the Trail of Tears. So he's a complicated figure. I mean, he helped pioneer these third-party politics. He had the strongest legal defenses of native sovereignty. But what did he really leave behind? I mean, if he, in his biggest court case, the controversial one with Aaron Burr, he lost. His presidential campaign lacked any kind of real political influence because of his contradiction. And despite arguing for Native Americans, he didn't really prevent any of the removal policies. I mean, he was a brilliant legal mind. It's known because people talked about him, and we do know of him. And because he was the longest serving Attorney General, obviously people liked him. And he was a defender of the Constitution. His work shaped the foundations of federal law and governance, and yet today he's often overshadowed by the presidents he served, mostly because they probably did a lot more in a lot of various different ways. But without Wirt, many of the legal battles that defined early America might have ended differently. So these are what we're looking at in the JQA treatment. We're not looking at the people who made these grandiose gestures to save America. We're not looking at these people who are the epitome of what it means to be American. We're looking at the people that have done something or did something underneath the presidency that was overshadowed, or that might have done something minorly significant, but it was still somewhat significant. And I think in this case, looking at his role in the trial of Aaron Burr, and his role in starting the third parties, and his role in, being somebody that is in a position of power, in a position of wanting federal power and arguing for Native American rights so early on, I think that in itself is pretty cool. So next time on the JQA treatment, we turn to Henry Stimson, the man who helped lead America through 2 world wars, shaped nuclear policy, and had a hand in some of the most consequential decisions in military history. As Secretary of War during World War II, he oversaw the U.S.'s military expansion and ultimately played a role in the decision to drop the atomic bomb. But was Stimson a pragmatic statesman, or did he help unleash an era of global destruction? Don't miss it. Subscribe now and leave a review. Until next time, stay curious and keep questioning history.